My name is Jake, and this is my story. I was 15 years old, and I had my whole life ahead of me. Back then, I was just an ordinary kid. I had dark, messy hair that was always a little too long, falling into my eyes because I never styled it right. My shoes had soles that were starting to peel off, and my backpack was covered in dumb little sketches I drew when I was bored during class. Dad always wanted me to try sports, but it never really clicked with me. I had different dreams of flying. I wanted to become a pilot someday. There was just something about planes that made me feel free. I wasn't one of the cool kids. I wasn't loud. I wasn't flashy. I was the quiet type. The kind of kid who held the door open, even if no one noticed. The kid who tried to be good, even when it didn't matter. One afternoon after school, I noticed her in the hallway. Let's call her Emily. She had dropped a stack of papers, and without thinking, I bent down to help her pick them up. We had a moment, not some big movie-like thing, just a small, awkward, sweet smile between two kids. I had seen her around before. She wasn't in my class, she was in 9B, but we shared French together every Thursday afternoon. She was one of the popular ones. The kind of girl who always had a group around her, laughing at jokes you weren't in on, walking the halls like she owned them without even trying. She wasn't mean exactly, just confident, bright. One of those girls who seemed untouchable, the way only some are at 15. I never thought she even knew my name. So when she smiled at me during lunch the next day, one of those real smiles that would make a 15-year-old get butterflies, and when her friends actually waved at me from across the cafeteria, it felt weird, like suddenly being cast into a play you didn't audition for. I wasn't used to that kind of attention. I wasn't used to being noticed. Later that week, Emily passed me a folded note during French class. Just a few words scrawled in the purple ink. Meet me after school, behind the swings. I must have read it 10 times. My palms were sweaty the whole last period. My knee bounced so hard under the desk. I wasn't sure if I was excited or terrified. Maybe both. After the last bell rang, I almost didn't go. I stood at my locker for way too long, pretending to organize papers I didn't even need. I kept thinking, what if this is a joke? What if they're all waiting to laugh at me? But in the end, I went. Because some small part of me wanted to believe, maybe for once, something good could happen to me. The swings were old and creaky, tucked behind the gym, where no one really went after hours. Emily was already there when I arrived, rocking gently back and forth, kicking at the dirt with the toe of her shiny white sneakers. She looked up when she saw me, smiled again, that same smile. I sat on the swing next to her, gripping the cold metal chains so tightly my knuckles turned white. We talked, about nothing and everything. Classes, teachers we both hated, how boring our town was. She told me she liked my drawings, said she had seen them on my backpack and thought they were cool. Cool? No one had ever called them that before. At some point, she leaned closer. I could smell the faint sweetness of her shampoo, something floral I couldn't name. My heart was hammering so loud in my chest, I was sure she could hear it. That's when she told me that she liked me, that she thought I was different. I didn't know what to say. I panicked, honestly. I told her, as gently as I could, that I didn't feel the same way, that I thought she was nice, but I liked someone else, someone I was too scared to even talk to. She went quiet, still swinging, but slower now. Her face was hard to read, half smile, half something else. I apologized, maybe too many times, told her I hoped we could still be friends. She said it was okay, that she understood, and for a moment, I believed her. She gave me a small smile, then turned and walked off toward the parking lot. I watched her go, something unsettled curling in my stomach, but I shook it off. The next morning, I woke up to sunshine pouring through my window. It was a beautiful day, one of those crisp autumn Fridays where the air feels cleaner somehow. I was excited. It was Friday. The weekend was just a few hours away, and I had big plans. My friend Noah and I were going to spend Saturday building model planes in the garage, and on Sunday, Dad promised he'd take me to the airfield to watch the small planes take off and land. Life felt good. Dad dropped me off at school like usual. He ruffled my hair before I got out of the car, like he always did, and told me to try not to daydream through math this time. I laughed. It was a normal morning. Or so I thought. The moment I stepped inside the building, something felt off. The air felt thicker. People were looking at me, not the usual glances you brush off, long, pointed stares. Whispers floated just out of reach. I couldn't catch the words, but I could feel the weight of them. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe I had toothpaste on my shirt. Maybe my hair looked even worse than usual. I tried approaching some friends between classes, guys I had known since third grade. "Hey," I said, laughing nervously. "Do I have something on my face or what?" They barely met my eyes, mumbled excuses about being late for class. Suddenly, they were very busy. My stomach twisted into a knot I couldn't untangle. Still? It was Friday! I shrugged it off by the time I got home that afternoon. Dad was fixing the lawnmower in the garage, and I told him, almost as a joke, that things felt weird at school that day. He looked up, squinting at me in the sunlight, and said, "Kids are weird sometimes, Jake. Don't sweat it." And I didn't. I let it go. I spent the weekend exactly like I had planned. Model planes, junk food, laughter. For a little while, I forgot. But Monday was worse. People didn't just whisper anymore. They moved away from me in the hallways. Groups parted when I walked by. I heard my name hiss like a bad word behind locker doors. Teachers looked at me differently, eyes narrower, colder. Mrs. Grant in English didn't even call on me, even when my hand shot up. Panic gnawed at my insides, slow and sickening. I couldn't make sense of it. Something was wrong, and I was desperate to know what. By third period, a voice crackled over the loudspeaker. "Jake Reynolds, please report to the principal's office immediately." A few kids turned to look at me. Some didn't bother hiding their disgust. One girl, someone I'd once helped on a group project, actually scooted her chair farther away from mine. My legs felt like jelly as I walked to the office. It felt like everyone was watching. Everyone was whispering. The secretary gave me a tight, unreadable smile when I arrived, told me to wait outside the principal's door, and then I saw them. 2 police officers, standing by the trophy case across the hallway, watching me. The principal's door opened. Mr. Adams stood there, grim-faced, beckoning me inside. No friendly greeting, no lecture about late homework. Just tension, thick enough to choke on. The officers stepped in behind me. I didn't even get to sit down. One of them, Officer Hernandez, I would later learn, told me I was being detained for questioning. Said some words that didn't make sense. Serious allegation, sexual misconduct, rights. Words that crashed against my brain, but refused to stick. The only thing that felt real was the cold snap of handcuffs locking behind me. I remember the cold bite of the metal, the way the cuffs felt way too tight, even though maybe they weren't. I remember hearing the secretary gasp softly. I remember the principal looking away. They walked me through the front office, through the hallway, right past my classmates, right past people I had known since kindergarten. The hallway buzzed with murmurs, faces blurred together, shock, anger, pity, glee. I walked through it all, and up until now, I had no idea what I had done. I kept waiting for someone, anyone, to say it was a mistake, that they had the wrong kid, that this was some kind of horrible misunderstanding. But no one did. I didn't even cry, not then. I think I was too scared for tears. All I could do was walk where they led me, down the hall, out the front doors, into the back of a waiting squad car. The door slammed shut beside me, sealing me inside, and just like that, whatever childhood I had left ended. The ride to the station was silent, except for the occasional crackle of the police radio. I sat there, pressed against the door, my heart beating so loud it drowned everything else out. My throat was dry. Sweat pooled at the base of my neck, soaking into the collar of my hoodie. I stared at my hands, still trembling, wishing I could turn invisible. At the station, they led me through a side door. No one smiled, no one explained anything. They treated me like I was already guilty. They sat me down in a small, cold room with buzzing fluorescent lights. There was a metal table bolted to the floor, 2 chairs, and a big mirror on one wall, the kind you see in movies where you know someone's watching from behind it. An officer, a different one now, came in, tossed a folder onto the table, and started asking questions. "Did you touch her? Did you lure her behind the school? Was it planned? I didn't even understand what they were accusing me of yet. The words didn't fit together. They felt like pieces of different puzzles jammed together by force. I didn't, I stammered, my voice cracking. I tried to explain, tried to say it must be a mistake, tried to say I barely even knew her. They didn't believe me. They barely even listened. Every time I opened my mouth, they cut me off, rolled their eyes, sighed heavily, like I was wasting their time. The room felt smaller and smaller, like the walls were pressing in. I could feel sweat trickling down my back. I thought I was going to be sick. And then, the door opened again. It was Dad. For a second, I actually thought it was a dream. He was still wearing his work uniform, grease on his sleeves, baseball cap pushed back on his head, and his face was twisted in a way I had never seen before. Shock, fear, and something worse, disbelief. "Dad," I croaked, my voice barely more than a whisper. He crossed the room in 2 steps and pulled me into his arms. I hadn't realized until that moment how badly I needed someone, anyone, to just believe me. He smelled like motor oil and fresh-cut grass, the kind of familiar scent that made me feel safe again. He talked to the officers, argued with them, demanded to know what was going on, why they were treating a 15-year-old kid like a criminal without even talking to his parents first. Eventually, after what felt like hours, they agreed to release me on bond. Dad posted it immediately, and we left through a back door to avoid the reporters starting to gather out front. When we got home, Mom was waiting. She had been crying. Her face crumpled when she saw me, and she hugged me so hard I thought I might actually break. They didn't ask questions that night. They just sat with me on the couch, one of them on either side, while the TV played a news report about some accident in a nearby town that none of us were really watching. But it didn't matter, because by Monday, the news about me had spread everywhere. Dad pulled me out of school the next day, said it was to protect me. But really, I think he knew it was already too late. The court date came quicker than I thought it would. Because I was a minor, it was technically supposed to be handled in juvenile court, but the accusation, sexual assault, was serious enough that the prosecutor wanted to try me as an adult. I didn't even know they could do that. Turns out, they can. Especially if the crime is considered violent and you're over 14. I sat in the courtroom, wearing the only suit I owned, a hand-me-down from my cousin that didn't quite fit right, while the town stared at me like I was some kind of monster. I kept my head down most of the time, couldn't stand to meet their eyes, couldn't bear to see the disgust written there. Emily sat across the room, surrounded by her parents and a lawyer. She cried on the stand, big heavy sobs that shook her shoulders and made everyone in the courtroom shift uncomfortably. I watched her through blurred vision, feeling like I had left my own body, like I was floating somewhere above, watching a movie I didn't want to be in. I kept thinking, this isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. Every word out of her mouth was another nail in the coffin they were building around me. The worst part was, some part of me still wanted to believe her, wanted to believe there was some mistake, some way this could all be fixed. But there wasn't. The town turned on us almost overnight. People we had known for years, neighbors, old family friends, even relatives, stopped answering our calls, stopped inviting us to things, started crossing the street when they saw us coming. Mom quit her job at the library because she couldn't stand the whispers. Dad got laid off after budget cuts at the garage, even though he had been Employee of the Month 3 times that year. Bills piled up. So did the stress. I started spending most of my days alone in my room. Blinds closed, lights off. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring. One night, about 6 months after the arrest, I climbed up onto the roof, sat there, toes dangling over the edge, staring down at the dark yard below. I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to feel anymore. Dad found me, sat next to me for 2 hours without saying a word. Just sat there. In the end, I climbed back down. But something in me stayed up there, something I never really got back. For 2 years, I lived like a ghost. No school, no sports, no laughter, no sunlight some days. Just court dates, rooms that smelled like disinfectant and fear. Questions I didn't understand. Accusations that burned when they touched, like acid on skin. The world outside kept moving. Birthdays happened. Seasons changed. The local football team even won the regional championship for the first time in a decade. But none of it touched me. I was frozen in time. I stopped keeping track of the months, stopped marking days on my calendar. It didn't matter anymore. Every day felt exactly the same. Heavy, lonely, hopeless. Most days, I barely got out of bed. Other days, I wandered around the house at night, stepping over creaky floorboards like a ghost haunting a home he no longer belonged to. Mom tried to make small talk sometimes. Weather, new shows on TV, anything normal. But her voice always broke by the end of the sentence. Dad barely spoke at all anymore. He just worked, fixed things that didn't need fixing, scrubbed things that were already clean. Our house was full of silence. Thick, heavy silence that pressed down on your chest and made it hard to breathe. And then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, everything changed. The doorbell rang. I was upstairs, lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling and tracing the cracks in the paint with my eyes. I heard Mom open the door, heard her sharp intake of breath, the kind of startled sound you make when something completely unexpected happens. I sat up, confused. "Jake!" she called, her voice stiff. "Someone's here, asking for you." I frowned. Nobody had asked for me in 2 years. Not one person. I dragged myself down the stairs. At the door, standing in the rain, was Katie. I knew her. Everyone did. Katie was Emily's best friend, the one always by her side, laughing, whispering secrets, passing notes in class. She looked different now. Older, sadder. Her blonde hair was soaked and sticking to her cheeks. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying for a long time, before she even got here. Mom stood there frozen, not sure what to do. I could see the hesitation on her face, the fear, the instinct to protect me, the exhaustion of being hurt so many times. You don't know who to trust anymore. Katie shifted awkwardly on the doorstep, clutching something in her hands. A worn hoodie, I think. "I need to talk to Jake," she said, her voice trembling. "Please." Mom hesitated for a long moment. Then, finally, she stepped aside. Katie stepped inside like she was crossing into enemy territory. I stood there, arms crossed tightly over my chest, heart hammering. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Part of me wanted to run and hide. Instead, I nodded toward the living room, and we sat on opposite ends of the couch, like two strangers waiting for a storm to pass. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the windows, and the old clock ticking too loudly on the wall. Finally, Katie spoke. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "I said nothing." I didn't trust myself to speak. She took a shaky breath. "I should have come sooner. I should have told someone. I was scared." I stared at her, waiting. Inside, my chest felt like it was being crushed by invisible hands. Katie twisted her fingers together, knuckles turning white. "Emily lied," she said finally. "She made it up." The words hung in the air like smoke, thick, suffocating. "I tried calling you," she rushed on. "I tried, but your number didn't work anymore. I didn't know where else to go. And when I saw you weren't at school, when I heard the things people were saying, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I still didn't move. I was afraid if I moved, I might shatter." Katie wiped at her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. "She told me right after it happened," she whispered. "She said she was mad you didn't like her back, that you weren't interested enough. She thought if she said something, it would make you pay attention. She didn't think it would get so big." She broke down crying, big, ugly sobs that filled the room. "I'm so sorry," she gasped. "I'm sorry, Jake. I'm sorry I didn't say anything. I'm sorry I let this happen to you." I sat there, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something. I wanted to grab her and shake her and demand how she could sit by for 2 years while my life burned down around me. But all I did was sit there, frozen, numb. Because somewhere deep down, part of me had already known. You don't survive 2 years like that without starting to believe you deserved it. Katie kept talking, something about going to the police, about getting a lawyer, about fixing this, but the words washed over me, blurred and meaningless. Nothing could fix this. Nothing could give me back the 2 years I lost. Nothing could undo the nights spent crying into my pillow. Nothing could heal the hole where my old life used to be. When she finally left, Mom sat next to me on the couch and pulled me into her arms. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There was nothing left inside me to cry with. After Katie spoke up, everything happened fast. At least, faster than I expected after 2 years of nothing but silence and pain. Her statement was recorded. She told them everything. How Emily had confessed that day after school. How it was supposed to be just a little rumor, a little revenge. A childish tantrum that spun out of control. When the authorities notified Emily that Katie was now a registered witness, Emily dropped the charges, just like that. 2 years of hell, 2 years of nightmares, 2 years of my life, and with a few scribbles of a pen on official papers. It was all over. At least, that's what they said. There were no apologies from the school, no apologies from the police, no front-page headline proclaiming my innocence. Funny, isn't it? When the accusation was made, my face was everywhere. Local news, school gossip, social media posts. 15-year-old boy accused of assault. My name splashed across screens and newspapers like it was some badge of shame I had earned. But when it was dropped, when the truth finally clawed its way, gasping into the light, silence. A tiny blip on page 6 of the local paper, tucked between an article about a lost dog and a bake sale. No bold letters, no urgency, no justice. The internet still had the old stories, though. The articles from when I was first arrested. The mugshot they took, my eyes wide and terrified. The comments full of hate from people who never even met me. Google my name, even now, and those stories are the first things you see. The truth, buried so deep you'd need a shovel and a miracle to find it. For a while, I stayed on the sex offender registry. Yeah, even after being cleared, because bureaucracy doesn't move at the same speed as gossip. Clearing my name from that list took months. Endless paperwork, endless meetings, endless nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I would ever be clean again. Some people still crossed the street when they saw me. Some parents pulled their kids closer when I walked by. Some neighbors still whispered when my mom went grocery shopping. Emily never apologized, not once. She got a slap on the wrist for filing a false report. A youthful indiscretion, they called it. Community service. A sealed record. A chance to go to college like nothing ever happened. I didn't get that luxury. I had to finish high school online. I skipped prom. Graduated alone in my bedroom with nobody clapping for me. Scholarships disappeared. Piloting dreams shriveled up. Most days, it felt like the world had moved on. But I was still buried under the rubble. I'm 23 now. People say time heals all wounds, like it's some universal truth, like it's some comforting blanket to wrap around your shivering heart. But it doesn't. Not really. Time just teaches you how to limp better, how to fake smiles at job interviews when they ask why there's a 2-year gap on your resume, how to avoid eye contact when people squint at you like they're trying to place your face in some ugly memory, how to live in a world that forgot to forgive you. Dating? I've tried. God knows I've tried. But when you've been dragged through hell like that, it leaves a scent on you. A scent only the sensitive ones can smell. Fear, mistrust, brokenness. I sit across from some smiling girl at a coffee shop, and I feel it all bubbling under the surface. Will she believe me if someone says something? Will she run if she Googles me? Will she look at me like a monster too? What if she accuses me the same way like Emily? Can I even trust her? Therapy helps, a little. Medication helps, a little. But some scars aren't meant to heal completely. Some are meant to remind you. Some nights when it's very late and the world is quiet, I stand outside and look up at the stars. I still dream of flying sometimes, of getting so high above this broken earth that none of it can touch me, of becoming weightless. Not with engines or wings, but with forgiveness. Real forgiveness. The kind that doesn't come from courts or news headlines, or even from the ones who hurt you. The kind you have to give yourself. Maybe someday I'll get there, but for now, I just stand there, barefoot on the cold grass, looking up and wishing that 15-year-old kid who held the door open for strangers could find his way back home.